Hello and welcome to Arts and Entertainment.
With Chris and Randall.
I'm Chris.
I'm Randall.
Welcome to the show. Please like and subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and please comment if you have ideas or suggestions on how we can improve or future shows that you'd like to hear about. Let's just get right into it. Today's topic is two different adaptations of Richard Jewell, the TV miniseries Manhunt Season 2, and the Clint Eastwood film called Richard Jewell. Both of them came out just a few months apart, and we're going to look at today how the docudrama in general works, our thoughts on docudramas as far as their accuracy. Are they interpretive? Do they provide a jumping off point? Can we enjoy them? Can we learn something from them? In general, Randall, what is your general feeling about docudramas? Are you a fan?
Yeah, I like them. I mean, I don't like when they get too inaccurate. Of course, when they try to like bend too many facts. I mean, that's annoying, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I generally will watch them and then read about them on Wikipedia afterwards.
it's a good point. And, to be really clear, we're not talking about documentaries or podcasts or true life crimes. Those are fascinating. Today, we're not really, but those are always recounting of actual facts. In the docudrama, there's an understanding that some of what you are hearing is speculative or interpretive, that you're taking facts that happened and then you're filling the parts of those events with things that didn't happen, but maybe move the story further along, or no one knows what happened, and you're just trying to come up with a theory to fill in the gaps, or maybe you didn't have the legal rights to a person, so instead of taking their story, you take a composite of stories. But there are aesthetic choices made that are inherently, I'm not going to say untrue, well, they're untrue, but they're made in service of narrative storytelling. And we're going to look at how it's done in a 10-part series on a streaming service compared to a 2-hour and 10-minute film directed by Clint Eastwood, and how those two different forms are similar and how those two different forms are different, and how do they work as entertainment and how do they work as infotainment. And just to basically get some backstory, for those of you who may not remember Richard Jewell or the Centennial Park bombing, Randall, do you remember this? That was 1996.
Yeah, I totally remember it. I followed it on the news when it happened.
All right. Well, that's what the great joy of being a middle-aged person is. 25 years ago was just last week. But for those of you who either weren't around then or just don't remember it back then, in 1996, Atlanta was the host of the Olympic Summer Games. On July 27th, a man named Richard Jewell, who was a security guard, found a backpack that was full of explosives. He was able to notify police and ATF of the bomb. They were able to move people away before the bomb went off. Unfortunately, 2 people were killed. One person had a heart attack. The other one was killed directly by the bomb, and over 100 people were injured. For the first 3 days, Jewell was considered a hero. And then on the 4th day, he became a person of interest by the FBI. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution leaked that story. Then the entire news media ran with it. Richard Jewell was actually innocent. It took about 4 months for him to have not so much to have his name cleared, but to have him no longer be considered a target of investigation. The FBI did not proceed in the most ethical way in the pursuit of their case. And there's questions about the reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and whether or not, from a journalistic perspective, what the journal did was correct. A former employer of Richard Jewell was actually the first person to contact the authorities to say, I think he is the bomber. So there's also just slander and libel issues that are factual. Now, there's a couple of other key facts I haven't really gotten into that we'll get into as we discuss the story. But I wanted to let you know if you didn't know much about Richard Jewell. Oh, and by the way, it wouldn't be until the end of that decade that they would know that it was a man named Eric Robert Rudolph who actually committed the Centennial Bar bombing. And it would still take almost 5 years to capture him and bring him to justice.
So the miniseries covers Rudolph's story. The movie doesn't cover Rudolph at all.
It just covers the 3 months in the life, the 4 months in the life of Richard Jewell. So let's actually go right into the first question, which is why are these films coming out now, 20 years after the fact? And Randall, I'm reminded of a saying I once learned a long time ago, that it takes about 20 years for journalism to become history. You know, that, and roughly speaking, I know that Eastwood started on this in 2014. I know the books were mostly written even earlier than that. But roughly speaking, certainly by the time it comes to market, it's been over 20 years. What is you think maybe the effect of looking at something that happened for those of us over 30, in our collective history, but now with 20 years to reflect?
Well, I guess first of all, I should say that the Richard Jewell story is a huge story. I mean, the media screwed up. The
Right, but I'm just
FBI
saying,
screwed up.
in relationship right now, just to the fact that 20 years have passed.
Right. Well, I'll get to that. So I mean, these are big stories. I mean, the Jewell case had far-reaching implications on how the media conducts business. So you know, it takes a while for the different forms of media to to create their narrative histories about it. So, you know, books have come out and articles, and Columbia School of Journalism has analyzed it, and then after all that stuff is made, you know, the people that make movies want to make a movie about it. So, I mean, 20 years, I mean, it seems like a long time, but a lot of stuff has to happen before these movies get made, I think.
Yeah, but I would just say that what is the effect? Not so much I'm not asking you why it took 20 years. I'm saying what is the thing that we get? I would argue certainly, you know, in the time that it happened, it was this is the birth of the 24-hour news cycle. There was a lot of stories of domestic terrorism around this period, like Waco, the Unabomber, the Oklahoma bombing. You know, it was a particular era in history where the FBI was considered an inherently good crime fighters. News was starting to go from newspapers to cable services. And now, you know, we now live in an era where, you know, 9/11 has happened. We have a very nuanced understanding of accuracy in media. We have a very nuanced understanding of the FBI. And I think many of us have kind of forgotten who Richard Jewell is, you know, and it lacks, it's no longer, we're now, and I think it's fair to say that we're now in a place in history where we can look back on 20 years ago maybe in a more analytical light. Is that fair to say?
Okay, I see what you're getting at. Yeah, maybe you're right about that. I'm sure, though, that there's still a lot of people that think Jewell did it.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we can now look at how did we think what we thought in the time that we thought it. And I now think we have 20 years of critical distance to do that. And I think, in fairness, both of the film and the miniseries are asking that question, which is how did we, as a people, a media, how did we come to believe something that was inherently wrong? And both of these, with 20 years, you get a little perspective on it. Just like in our own lives, you know, how did I believe something 20 years ago was okay, that now 20 years later I go, that's absurd. How do we mature and evolve? So my first question is, that's not really even a question, that was just more of a thought. How do you feel about the movie Richard Jewell, just as a movie? You know, what did you like about the movie? What did you not like about the movie? What's your feelings about the movie?
The Eastwood movie?
The Clint Eastwood movie.
I
Yeah.
think that the Eastwood movie is just a great movie. Just it's great filmmaking. I mean, Clint delivers always with his movies. The acting is superb. I think the writing is great. I mean, there's something that a lot of screenwriters and movies fail to do is that, it's that they fail to incorporate the philosophical questions that are underlying the material they're exploring. And I think the Jewell movie really does a great job of that. I mean, I don't have the exchange right in front of me right now, but there's this great exchange where Jewell's lawyer talks to Scruggs, the reporter, and he says, she says something like, I reported the facts, and he said, the facts, what about the truth? So it was a great exchange in the movie. I mean, it's a great piece of dialogue. I mean, it probably never happened, but it's a poetic truth, shall we say.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of social commentary in the movie. I think it's certainly one of Clint Eastwood's great strengths as a director is his sense of place. I think that the way that they film the Olympic Park, the Centennial Park, sorry, the way they the Kenny Rogers Gambler, I think in general a lot of Eastwood. One of the things I like about him as a director in general is he's very good at creating a sense of place, a lived-in quality, a sense of community, a sense of humanity, which I agree.
Can I just say something else about Eastwood?
Go
before we move on. Yeah, so Eastwood is.
I wasn't going to move on. I was actually going to talk. Go ahead.
Okay, well,
go on.
Eastwood is kind of infamous in Hollywood for doing 2 takes of a scene, and if you know the way Hollywood movies are shot, I mean, some directors are infamous for doing like hundreds and hundreds of takes. Like I think Fincher is, and Kubrick was. I mean, Kubrick's like the biggest let's do 1,000 takes monster in Hollywood's history. But Eastwood's famous for like saying, because the standard is 3 takes. You shoot the same thing 3 times, and Eastwood's like, why 3? Let's just do it twice, which is like completely unheard of. I mean, maybe you get into Hitchcock territory when you get into that. But the reason I mention this is because I think this really comes across in Eastwood's movies with the acting, because actors, because I've worked on productions and shot things, and like actors after a little while they get tired, and doing the same performance, the same lines, delivering it over and over and over, you're losing some of the magic, some of the spontaneity from the actors. And so when you watch an Eastwood movie, the acting is just, it's superb. It's great. I mean, you see acting in Eastwood movies they just feel so naturalistic. And I mean, he's a great director. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I was just going to comment on what you just said and say that I had never seen Walter Hauser before. And I really thought he did a great performance as Richard Jewell. I did watch, I will talk about the other performer in a moment. And I did also watch, just for this, some of the actual interviews with the real Richard Jewell. And I thought it was interesting how Hauser's choice is to play Jewell very much as an innocent, very much as a man-child. There's definitely almost a humorous, childlike innocence and quality to him that makes him very lovable. And he really leans into that. And his scenes between Kathy Bates, who plays Bobby Jewell, are very warm, very affectionate. You really buy the relationship. Same with his relationship to Watson Bryant, played by Sam Rockwell. And I like Sam Rockwell's take is very humorous and witty, clever and smart. I like that you get to see his wife, his relationship. I thought that Kathy Bates really plays a very warm, affectionate, you buy just the physicality and the emotional shorthand between the two of them. I felt that John Hamm is literally just playing John Hamm. I'm sorry and I like John Hamm, and I saw him and have seen him in films. I think the song was called Beirut, which was written by. Anyway, he is a good actor, and he's capable of doing other things besides. What is his character called in Mad Men? Don Draper. He's capable of being more than a Don Draper. I felt that he was just basically Don Draper as an FBI agent, and Olivia Wilde's performance was certainly not. It was okay, but it wasn't particularly distinctive. I think she's a gorgeous woman, and I've seen her do really good work. And I don't think she does bad work. But at the same time, I when we get to the miniseries, I will talk about why I thought Carla Genio actually did a considerably better work, which is funny because I'm not a big fan of Carla Genio at all. But I really will say that the strength of Eastwood in general, I agree with you, is he's a director's actor, and the things I like the most about this film are the acting, as you said, and I do like that he's starting to make small films like The Mule, like this, that are based on real ordinary people who just have brief moments of extraordinary bravery. And that's it. And in a sense, it's a very small film because it's all about Richard Jewell, I would argue, just learning to stand up for himself and understanding the difference between admiring authority, respecting authority, and knowing when authority is being abused. And it's a very simple and humanistic tale.
I just want a little tidbit is Eastwood made another movie about the FBI called J. Edgar. So if you're interested in his take on the FBI, that's a great movie. It's about J. Edgar Hoover.
So aesthetically, let's now talk about the miniseries. It's like Manhunt, Season 2, Dangerous Games. The Hunt for the Centennial Park Bomber. I think I may have mussed up the title. I just want
to say.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. If you do want to watch Richard Jewell, it's available right now on HBO Max.
Okay, and I just want to say, Manhunt is it's a series, but it's like one of these anthology series, like American Horror Story, where they do like a completely different story every season. So this season is self-contained. So you're just, what is it, 8-10 episodes or something, and you just watch it.
It's 10 episodes. It's available on Netflix. It's called Manhunt Season 2, Deadly Games.
Right. So that's all you have to watch. You don't have to watch the other seasons, like if you're interested in this story.
Right. Exactly. There's no carryover. And again, it came out. It was filmed at the same time. I did want to mention that. I just wanted to mention for a second that Richard Jewell is based on the Vanity Fair article "American Nightmare: The Ballad of Richard Jewell," and the book "The Suspect in Olympic Bombing: The FBI Media and Richard Jewell, the Man Caught in the Middle." And those are both written by Brenner. Sorry, I only have the last name. And I actually found on YouTube, there's about an hour-long documentary, not on Richard Jewell, but a Q&A with the author of that book. So if you do want to do more research, by all means, I would recommend that. And
with who? With Brenner or Alexander?
With Brenner.
With Brenner? Okay.
Brenner, yeah. And then the source material for Manhunt is based on Marianne Vollier's book, Lone Wolf, which is, in fairness, mostly about Eric Robert Rudolph. So this time I'll start. I like procedurals. I'm a big fan of these kinds of shows. Ever since Law and Order came out, I love how in 10 hours, you're getting a lot of information on how the FBI, the ATF, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, the politics. You really get to see in a large spectrum what all the various actors were at play, the politics, the dynamics. There's a lot going on, and I really feel like, in fairness, wow, my hair is a little bit in my face. In fairness, well, there's a lot going on with my hair right now. Sorry. In fairness, it's good in a very Law and Order procedural CSI way. They really talk about bomb making and the mechanics and and then it switches over to the hunt for Eric Robert Rudolph, which is very fascinating. Not really related to what we're talking about today, but really worth talking about at some point in the future because, he was like one of the longest manhunts. He went up hiding in the wilderness for 5 years, and they only caught him by accident. And it deals with a lot of cool and interesting topics. How did you feel about it?
Well, let me ask you a question. I don't know if you did any research on this, but I believe that there's still a lot of questions. I think I don't know if it's for sure, but the series, it took a lot of liberties with the hunt for Rudolph. There's a lot of questions.
We're definitely going to get to that in a moment. I just really want to talk about as a work of entertainment.
Yeah, it was a great work of entertainment. They took they took the entirety of the FBI and the entirety of the ATF, and they compressed them into one or two characters, which was a stylistic, aesthetic choice that was good. It was what you talked about, how the bomb making expert, he recreates the bomb. You get to see how he recreates the bomb and how he explores the forensics of the bomb investigation. That was something you don't see every day in a procedural. Yeah. So that was fun to watch.
So, I mean, there's just a lot of intellectually compelling stuff. I will say also that acting, again, much like the Clint Eastwood film, is the strongest element of the film, of the miniseries. And I'll be more precise. I thought that Cameron Britton's performance as Richard Jewell was as compelling,
yes,
but different. I felt that, in fairness,
yes,
he played him as a much more frustrated guy, a much more depressed person, a person who there was just a lot more self-loathing. And when watching the actual tapes of the Jewell interviews, I did feel he nailed that element brilliantly well. And again, I don't say that one's a better performance than the other. I would honestly say the best comparative is that they both find something really interesting and different in each of their takes, and they're quite wonderful. They look both like Richard Jewell. Judith Light as Bobby Jewell. Now, we'll get into this later. Their relationship in this production is the opposite of the film, but I found Judith Light, who, even though you think of her more from Who's the Boss, the woman went to the Yale School of Drama, and she's dynamic. You know what I'm saying? There's a real energy. There's a fire. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot going on in her Bobby Jewell that is just exciting. She's mistrustful of her son. She believes in the news. She is not always a good mom. She has a real arc. And in that sense, she does feel like, Judith Light has 10 hours. She has literally 8 hours more to develop her character than Kathy Bates. So I'm not saying Kathy Bates couldn't do that. I'm just saying Judith Light really, and again, I may not think that the scenes between those two actors have the same mother and son shorthand, but there's definitely a chemistry between them that is very adversarial and very compelling. And then as far as J.O. Saunders as Wyatt Watson Bryant, in many ways, it's almost the same character, albeit, Sam Rockwell is a slender man in his early 40s, and J.O. Saunders is a big, heavy man in his late 60s. So
it's really,
they're playing the same guy, but in such radically different bodies.
It's so amazing how both productions, they're different, but they both knock everything out of the park. I mean, I feel like,
I definitely say, and Saunders has been in the theater as well as film and TV. He's a character actor. He's been around literally since the 70s. And he does a lot of the same stuff that Rockwell does. He just does it. It's more paternalistic, in fairness. He is clearly old enough to be Richard's dad, and as opposed to big brother or kindly uncle. And that dynamic just kind of enters the scene whenever you have somebody that much older. So let's talk now about, let me get to this here. How are they different? Go for it, man.
Well,
I'm sorry. I want to just quickly say, I forgot to talk about Carla Genio. Carla Genio's Kathy Scruggs is excellent in that she does great acting. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
she plays a villain. She is hard. She's ambitious. She is very pointed, and yet at the same time, she's sympathetic and believable. Unlike, I guess that's. I'm segueing. I'm segueing into how they're different. So let me just finish my thought because I'm going to segue, which is that Wilde is playing a type and Genio is playing a fully fleshed character. I'm not saying that I like the portrayal of Kathy Scruggs. We'll get to that later. I'm just saying, and by the way, Genio is way too old for the part, and nowhere nearly as pretty as Wilde. Both of the women, by the way, much prettier than the real woman they're playing, but she has a sense of humor. She has many masks. She's far more charming. She's far more cruel. There's just a lot more exploration in her choices. Okay, you were going to say something.
All right. I know we shouldn't be rating women, but from the pictures I've seen, the real Carla, she's a gorgeous woman, and I think she's even better looking than the actresses. And I believe both these actresses
Carla
are very
Genio
beautiful women.
is
Yes.
a better looking woman than
No.
Kathy Scruggs?
Kathy, the real Kathy is gorgeous, and she's better looking than the actresses.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify what you just said.
And I believe
Okay.
both these actresses are very beautiful. I mean, Carla is a very beautiful woman. But
I hate her as an actress. This is one of the few times that I really thought.
Why do you hate her as an actress?
I've never found her believable. Strangely enough.
I love her. She's one of my favorites.
Well, she certainly turned a page for me as well. So Howard.
Well, let me say then that they give Carla playing this character a lot to do. Surprisingly, in after the Jewell story breaks down, they let her deal with the with having the story fall apart. And she visits her mother's house, I think it is, and she looks at her childhood bedroom, and they give her a lot of stuff to do right there.
Well, and maybe you're one of the keyest differences, and we've already touched upon it, but it's a big difference worth hitting it hard, is that the storytellers behind Richard Jewell of Manhunt have 10 hours. Now, true, they not only have to tell the story of Richard Jewell, they have to tell the story of Eric Robert Rudolph, they have to tell the story about the FBI investigators, the ATF. There's certainly more people and more storylines they have to follow. But because you have that length of time, you just have more time for really good character exploration. Whereas the film, even though it's 2 hours and 10 minutes, as I said before, it's deliberately small. You know, it's not about an 8-year manhunt. It's about 3 months in the life of Richard Jewell. And it doesn't, you know, it instead of expanding its story, it drills down more into greater detail within that story. And therefore certain aesthetic choices, unfortunately or fortunately, are different depending on the mediums. I do think that the writing is as far as just writing, not as far as accuracy, but just as far as screenwriting and is better in the film than in the TV series.
Well, yes, the film, well, we already said it, but yeah, the film, the screenwriter has a great ear for dialogue. The dialogue is almost every line in the Richard Jewell film has weight and is done well. I mean, you can understand everything that's going on. I mean, there's nothing extraneous. The miniseries. Let me ask you this, Chris. Do you think there's some degree of filler in the miniseries? I mean, I don't know.
I think there's some degree of filler in the miniseries. I think there's also some degree of filler in the film because they're looking for moments of lightness. You know, either they're showing the FBI director's dad the FBI investigator's dad to make you feel sympathetic for him, or in the TV show, in the movie Richard Jewell, the whole subplot between the lawyer and his secretary. There's little beats to keep things just to break a little bit and let the air in. But I don't really feel they move the story forward, and I don't think they're necessary. I will say what's really interesting that's different is there's certain scenes, and now we've tried to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but come on, folks, you know what happened.
We're going to spoil it. We're now going
to talk about, there is a scene in the miniseries where Richard Jewell said, basically, the fact, the FBI realized that there was a phone call placed to 911 a half hour before the bomb went off, where the caller was warning the 911 operator, there's a bomb in Centennial Park, you have a half hour to evacuate. Now, at the time that phone call was made, they knew exactly where Richard Jewell was standing. And for him to get to the payphone and back, given time, location, speed, and all the other elements, he could not make it in the 5 minutes that were allotted. So in Richard Jewell, in Manhunt, the way they deal with that is Richard Jewell comes to that realization, Richard Jewell, in the middle of the day, goes with his lawyer to the actual Centennial Park area where the payphone still is, and he has the lawyer with a timer time him as he runs very fast back and forth while Kathy Scruggs is watching this from a distance.
She just happens to be there.
Just happens to be there, watches it from a distance, doesn't, by the way, think, well, there's a story. She just goes, what's there about? Like, and that's it, And then in the Clint Eastwood movie, it's nighttime, and the lawyer is with his secretary, and cut with Michael Johnson, who was running a 5-minute mile. Interspersed is Sam Rockwell leisurely walking from the exact same space to the payphone and back, and actually just to the payphone, with his secretary timing him, saying, and even at a leisurely pace, this would not happen. Now, those two things cannot both be true. And in fact, what you're realizing is not only are those two things both not true, both of those things are absolutely untrue. So why the Clint Eastwood film made one choice and the Manhunt miniseries people made another choice, I'll never know. Personally, as fiction writing goes, I prefer Richard running with his lawyer telling him, hey, it's good that you're fat and out of shape. I just thought it was a cheerier scene than the more cool and elegant way they intercut an Olympic athlete with Sam Rockwell just strolling with a timer. But that's just me. And I don't want to get into too many other things that are different, but there is certainly enough key different plot points in the defining scene of, yes, this is a humongous spoiler. The defining scene of Manhunt season 2 is when Richard Jewell goes on 60 Minutes and is interviewed with Mike Wallace. And we are going to actually have a clip of the Mike Wallace interview from 60 Minutes available at the bottom if you're looking at us on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I'll link to it in the description.
So you can look at the real thing. So basically, that's the definitive moment when Richard Jewell stands up for himself, Mike Wallace grills him, and after that's over, basically the film is over because he's had his moment of truth. He stood up for himself, and he's gone from being a boyish, shy person to being a man in full. It's quite a beautiful scene in the movie. Look at, by the way, the documentary, the actual 60 Minutes interview, and tell me if you see the same thing or if you feel that's artistic license. I really want to know. So let us know. Oh, but then in the movie, the big scene is when Richard Jewell is sitting in front of the FBI agents being interviewed, and he stands up to them and he says, I respect authority, but I look at the decals in the back that say FBI, and I don't respect your authority, or, you guys, he basically calls them out on them not doing their job, and that he can understand there's a difference between the role and the person in the role. And
well, he says he used to look up to and admire the FBI and even want to be FBI, but now that he sees the way he's been treated and how they're like investigating him with no evidence, they have no evidence, they're trying to railroad him. I mean, he doesn't use those words, but he's lost respect for them. He's lost respect for them.
Your memory is 1,000 times better than mine, and I just watched this last night again. So thank God I have a partner like you, Randall. But I wanted to let you know, people, that scene where he does that, he's Sam Rockwell, the lawyer, isn't in the room with him. It's two other lawyers who are never in either production are with him that he also had. It's not the FBI agents. That there's like 4 different people that he's talking to, none of whom are those FBI agents who don't really exist because they're competent people. And the actual interview is 6 hours long. So it's a speculative scene. But anyway.
I don't know. They may have the transcripts for that interview. I have no idea.
They may do, actually, and that may be what he said. So I like the 60 Minute interview. These are very so now, how are they similar, Randall?
Well, I'm really surprised by the similarities. I mean, I think they hit all the major beats of the Jewell story for the most part. I think we're in this era because in the olden days, Chris, they used to make movies and TV shows and things based on real events, and they would really take off on these events and just make all sorts of stuff up. But I don't think people can get away with that anymore, because I think the most infamous example, to me anyway, is the bridge over the river Kwai, which is like based on an actual event, but I guess the movie is like 99% untrue.
Well, I hate to disagree with you, Randall, but no, there's a humongous piece of glorious bullshit that gets Richard Jewell, the movie, into a hotbed of necessary trouble. We'll get to that on the next question. But right now, let's just talk about what they have in common as far as like similarities. Do you feel that I think that Richard's arc is very similar in both the 10-hour miniseries and in the film. I think they're very similar arcs. Mm-hmm. I think that the relationship between his lawyer and himself are very similar. It's amazing to me, and I guess I forgot to mention what's different, is, you know, his mom and him are just the opposite relationship. You know, she's a very angry mom who does not like her son or respect her son very much
the TV series, yes,
the
TV series, their relationship seems a little abusive even, which, you know, actually makes a lot of sense, because Jewell is quite overweight, like in real life. I mean, it seems like that could be some evidence of some sort of abuse going on in that household, maybe.
And I'll say this much, you learn a lot more about Bobby Jewell in the positive at the end of the miniseries, that she didn't get her Tupperware back, that she's alive and well, she didn't get her Disney movies. Whereas in the Clint Eastwood film, she gets her Tupperware back, which isn't true. And all you learn about her is that she's now babysitting the lawyer's kids. So in fairness, I don't think that the movie, I don't think the TV show is trying to slam Bobby Jewell as much as giving her much more of an arc of trying to see her son as a man in full, versus no arc really for Bobby Jewell.
Well, I just want to
about the arc for Bobby Jewell, for Kathy Bates, I think, is that she comes to the realization that she can't protect her son, which is very heartbreaking. And if you do watch her recreate the Bobby Jewell press conference interview, when Kathy Bates does it, it's brilliant, because that's the choice she made, is that this is the moment in which she has decided that she can't protect her son, so she's pleading to President Clinton to protect her son. Whereas I will say that Judith Light, this is not the strongest beat in her story, because in her story, she's such a grouchy person in this story that for me, I feel that her arc really peaks going from seeing her son as a failure to seeing her son as a man in full.
Okay, well, I just want to say, like, in the movie, the relationship they have in the movie, it just strikes me as more realistic. I mean, it's more believable to me that, I mean, they live together.
That's because you have a nice mom. That's because you have a nice mom.
My mom is very nice.
I met your mom. Your mom is much more Kathy Bates, Bobby Jewell. Maybe my mom is more Judith Light. That's what I'm just saying.
You know,
don't be bragging that you come from a happy family.
I've met Chris's
mom. I'm sorry, Mom.
By the way, she seems very nice. But anyway,
that's a cheap shot on my mom. I apologize, Mom. I love you. I just wanted to disagree with Randall, and therefore I was willing to throw my mom under the bus.
Well, I just want to say that I mean, maybe the way you see Jewell's relationship with his mother is going to be influenced by your own background with your mother. I mean, perhaps.
That's probably, we're learning too much about me. So let's talk about you. Randall, now we're going to hit what is the relationship to the truth. I just want to get this out right off the bat. Kathy Scruggs is portrayed as a drug addict in both, an alcoholic in both, someone who sleeps with her sources, someone who's cruel, who's mean, who is willing to do anything, who can break into cars, who will come and haunt Bobby Jewell at her office. She's a horrible, terrible human being, a slut. She's just as bad as can be. And this was a problem for Clint Eastwood when they released the movie, but for some weird ass reason, even though she's portrayed far worse in Manhunt, much worse than she's portrayed. She's not even given she's crying in the movie. She cries when Bobby Jewell gives her, "Please, President Clinton, save my son." But she doesn't even do that. She just scoffs like Cruella de Vil in Manhunt. She's just she's like the world's worst Disney villain. So there's a lot of things about this Richard Jewell that are just horse hockey, but this one is the most reprehensible. So, Randall, you've worked in a newspaper. You've explain where they've gone completely off their case in their depiction of her.
Well, I just want to say, just from an aesthetic point of view, I enjoy watching her character. I mean, she's a fun character in both of these projects. I mean, they sex her up and, they give her all this stuff to do. That's entertaining.
That's not a fun character because it's inherently misogynistic. She is an evil woman because she's the woman, and that's not funny.
I don't know. I don't see her as evil.
Well, yeah, through your male perspective, probably, but no. Let's just deal with this.
But I think the reality, and there's, I linked to an, you can look in the description. There, the Columbia School of Journalism did analysis of, how Scruggs came upon this story. The reality is probably just mundane. That Kathy Scruggs was just a typical police beat reporter at a smaller newspaper. I mean, and she was friendly with the police. She had her ear to the ground. The rumor was going around that Jewell was a suspect, so she got caught wind of it, and she didn't do anything except for normal reporting. And I used to work at a small newspaper. I mean, it was just a weekly. I mean, it was much smaller than the JJC. But she didn't do anything unusual that another reporter wouldn't do. I think that but I think the system really fails her, okay? Like in a journalistic sense in real life, because she takes this story about Richard Jewell being a suspect to her editor, and the editor wants to go with this story, and the editor bends a lot of journalistic rules that he's put in place at the paper, like, for instance, not going with a story that's based on completely anonymous sources. And the editor also takes the story to the FBI before he prints it, and he asks the FBI, so we're going to call Richard Jewell a focus of the investigation, and they agonized over that term, They agonized over what to call him. Is he a target? Is he a suspect? Is he a person of interest? They decided to call him a focus. And he takes that story to the FBI, and the FBI, the editor has a source to the FBI, and the source tells the editor, yeah, it's fine, whatever. And they print the story. And then CNN, which is also based in Atlanta, it's like a whole cacophony of events that come together to catapult this story into the national spotlight. Tom Brokaw ends up just basically jumping off this story, Scruggs' story, and talking about how Richard Jewell is about to be arrested and all this. And, he's sued for, libel for this later on. And, so, I mean, both these projects, you're right, Chris. So both these projects, they try to sex up the Scruggs character. And I don't know, Chris. I enjoy anti-heroes and villainous women. I enjoy those type of characters.
But since
I don't abhor them.
But since you're able to share a bit of your personal experience working for the newspaper and kind of shedding some light on how newspapers used to work before the age of the internet and the 24-hour news cycle, and in a way, this is really something we should get to just in a minute about the rise of the 24-hour news cycle as it relates to this. Is that only a few years earlier, in 1990, so about 6 years earlier, when I was at NYU Film School, I was an intern for a production company that did true crime movies of the week. And what we would do is, if a crime happened, it was my job to call and collect the names of everybody who was an eyewitness, and you try to get as many people who were involved in the story to sign a release so that you would have the right to their stories. And then you already had the company I worked for had a pre-existing contract with CBS. So I should say a major network, since I don't really want to, well, too late, I said CBS, which is strangely enough to also the people who ended up distributing Manhunt. So that's interesting. So anyway, their job with CBS is if they found something, they already had a writer on staff, and they would work up a treatment. They'd get people's releases. Anyone that they could not get a release to, they would put them into what's called a composite character. And a composite character would just be based on several different characters who they didn't have the legal right to use their likeness, name, or actual words. So then, they would pitch it to CBS, and if CBS really liked it, they would have to pretty much quickly have their writer on staff take all and any source material that could be found quickly and bang out something very fast with some traditional melodramatic hooks, and then it would come to the air. And at CBS, thankfully, and those styles of movies of the week kind of really stopped happening by the end of the decade. But one thing that you still see today is this need to kind of heighten the stakes, heighten the drama, create characters that aren't really real, but just either drive the story forward or can fill in stuff. And I feel like the problem in both of these productions is there is no real FBI agents or FBI agency to really cast as the villain in this story. And I think that the FBI really gets left off the hook. It's either the composite character played in the streaming miniseries, or it's a composite character played by John Hamm, but it becomes the composite character's fault. And so the FBI never really is at fault. It just becomes people doing a bad job and not the institution. And since the people that they're talking about aren't even real people, it lays way too much blame on Kathy Scruggs and not enough of the onus on the FBI. Yes, Eric Robert Rudolph is clearly a villain, and I guess in Manhunt he does get his just due, but Eric Robert Rudolph isn't the villain of the tragedy that is Richard Jewell. That is really, I would argue, the FBI, and I think that's the most problematic element, because I feel like what happened to Richard Jewell, which is a need for the world of news to put a narrative story with a hero and a villain into something that doesn't have a clear hero and a villain, taking Richard Jewell from someone you thought was a hero to making him a villain based on the fact that he's just a heavy, ugly, poor guy. So therefore he fits the casting. I think that is a tragedy to Richard Jewell. But then you take an attractive woman who is the reporter, and you just decide because she's attractive and she wears clothing that heightens her attraction, she's just going to be the evil slut, and she's dead, so she can't really defend herself. That basically the film and the TV series does to Kathy Scruggs what everybody did to Richard Jewell, which kind of unfortunately undercuts the moral imperative of both works.
Well, I just want to say that I have no problem with a woman being a slut, and also I think both these projects. But you're right. I mean, I think both these projects are trying to perhaps vilify her a little bit. But
and with no basis in reality.
It doesn't work.
So that they can,
I just want to say it doesn't work on me. It doesn't work on me personally, because I like women like that. But
but they're just—that's a cheap joke, and it's beneath you.
It's not a joke. I don't have any problem with her,
dude. It's a cheap joke. But the point is. The point is that it undercuts what it's trying to do, because the need to impose a false narrative to create a conventional tale of entertainment, which is what happens with Richard Jewell, is essentially what happens in these adaptations by Kathy Scruggs, which means in a sad way, we've kind of learned nothing.
Well, I just also wanted to say that I kind of disagree with you on the point of the FBI. I think the FBI looks really bad in both of these, like as an institution.
Individuals at the FBI, but we never learn enough about what went wrong at the FBI, because we never know who the real agents were, or what Director Louis Freeh's actual involvement was, or Janet Reno at the Department of Justice's was as AG. So and considering this is around the same time as Waco, which was a disaster, around the same time as Oklahoma City bombing and the Unabomber, it would really be helpful to get a better sense of what Janet Reno and Louis Freeh and the FBI were like, and what were their principles. So then my last question to you really is it really the goal of the docudrama to inform, or is it just good enough for it to entertain? Are we asking too much from the docudrama?
Well, this is like a philosophical question. I mean, I think that the docudrama falls into this form of modern day entertainment that you could consider infotainment, where they try to take information and turn it into something entertaining, and it's like a listicle, or I mean, all journalism is like this. I mean, it's like you try to take a bunch of facts and you try to make a story out of them. I mean, they call in journalism, you don't say you're publishing a set of facts. You say you're publishing a story, and the reason is because you're taking a bunch of facts and you're trying to make a narrative, you know. And if one of those facts doesn't fit your narrative, then you discard it. You know, there's this great part. You know, the FBI knew that Richard Jewell couldn't have made the phone call very soon. Like, even like, I don't know, the Columbia Journalism article said it might have even been like before they even leaked the information he was a suspect to Scruggs, or she may have found it out herself, but that was an inconvenient fact for the FBI's narrative. So they just omitted it, or they said that he had an accomplice, you know, and they didn't bother to tell Scruggs that information. The FBI guy in charge that talked to the editor at the AJC didn't bother to tell the editor that information either, which is, you know, we have this world where we have a very complicated world, Chris, and people are constantly trying to take a bunch of facts and turn them into a narrative, because that's how our minds work. You know, that's how we make sense of the world. You know, we turn it into a story. That's the primary. A story is like, what is a story? It's like a model of reality, and you make this model, and the model helps you to understand reality. But your model could be flawed, and you know, you look, if you watch both of these works, you know, they're both different models of reality, different models of what happened. And you can see they're not entirely the same. I mean, they have similarities, but they're not entirely the same. I mean, and you know, some of the lies they're both telling, like you bring up about the Scruggs. I mean, they're both telling similar lies about Scruggs, and you end up asking, why are they both so fixated on that? Well, it's because, you know, they want to sex up the story. They want to make the story more fun for the audience. You know, and that's the problem with docudramas. That's the problem with infotainment, is they're trying to inform, but they're also trying to entertain. Entertainment is probably the main thing, right? That's the main purpose of all these things. I mean, otherwise, you would just read like a Wikipedia article, and you wouldn't have to watch the movie. So, so at the end of the day, we have a work that is based on facts, but it's trying to entertain you. I mean, it's a problem with all journalism. I mean, I don't know what you do about it. I mean, it's fun to watch, though.
Well, I think you raise a couple of interesting points, which is, I think, the actual story of Richard Jewell is that in 1996, it had just been about 5 years since the start of the first Gulf War that put CNN on the map. And by 96, we had gone from being a society, we were starting to go from being a society that would get its paper in the morning and watch the nightly news at night, to this idea of a 24-hour news cycle. And newspapers and the nightly news used to just be about the story today, tune in tomorrow if there's more of a story. And now by 96, they were losing to people who were like, let's keep the story moving, regardless of whether or not there are facts to put into it. And because the story becomes entertainment, it even gets echoed out on Saturday Night Live sketches and Jay Leno monologues, and it just enters the water cooler conversation as easily as any TV show or movie or pop song might enter water cooler conversation. And the tragedy of it is that our desire to make entertainment out of news, or to make news into entertainment, causes us to be propagandists. And if there is a victim to the propaganda, as long as people are being entertained, it feels like it's a small sacrifice worth making. And I feel that these are both engaging and entertaining, but highly flawed works. And I think you can appreciate the acting. I think you can appreciate the storytelling. But at the same time, you do have to be aware of the limitations of what these people are doing and where they fall short. It'll be interesting to see when a good documentary comes out, or maybe how the Richard Jewell subject is handled in another 20 years, when maybe we can deal more with the with this Kafka-esque tragedy of being an innocent person put on trial with no one believing. Right now, it's certainly better than an episode of Perry Mason, where the accused is just revealed to be innocent and the bad guy is turned out at the end. Well, that was a great conversation. At the bottom of this on Facebook, you will see a clip of the 60 Minutes interview. You will see another video on what the movie Richard Jewell got right and what it got wrong. What is you put another thing, a case study on Richard Jewell?
You talking about the article about how Scruggs got the story?
Yeah,
that was the Columbia School of Journalism. I think
that should be at the bottom of our Facebook post. And I feel like I'm forgetting something, that maybe that was all that was in there.
I got the YouTube videos, the 60 Minutes interview, and the Q&A with Brenner, maybe.
All right, so there's a lot of information. If you're interested, this is available. The miniseries is available on Netflix. The movie is currently available on HBO. Please watch it, form your own opinions. This is great conversation. We'll pick it up again. If a number of people really want to talk about this further, we'll do a mini episode where we answer your questions and continue the dialogue. Until then, I'm Chris.
I'm Randall.
Thanks for listening, and be well.